No, hit the, just make your black screen full screen. Hit the box up there. There you go.
We're recording.
Yeah, it's a recording.
Recording.
Make it relaxing.
Okay, got a full house here, that's great. I'll have a call to order. Chris, Kimberly, Paul, myself, Lenny,
Bradley's here,
Bradley's here. Jenna, Tanya,
Brought that up.
Hans, and Charlie. I've got your last names I wrote, but I just took it for front here. Before we get into old business or new business, I just wanted to follow up on, we received the email from Lorna about kind of the role of this committee, which is to do research and then report back to the planning board and select board our results. So with that, I spoke with Sarah Langet yesterday just to say, kind of to see what the planning board is thinking. How do you want this to work? She said the planning board would like us to formulate our recommendations in writing and then send them to the planning board for review. That was basically what, and maybe there's some, we talked a little bit before everybody came in here, maybe a midpoint thing, to kind of, instead of just giving them our final product, maybe one that's close to being final, but have some input on before. So,
Yeah, go through everything one time
yeah,
and then go to them and ask for their feedback on it.
yeah.
And then we could do more investigation.
Do we have to go through the planning board first, or can we just go to the select board?
Planning board.
Yes, well,
Yeah,
right.
they don't want us to do it. They told us that.
What the planning board doesn't want us to make any changes to the. to
They
the
said
shoreline zone?
all it will take is one person to vote it down, and that'll be the end of it.
Well, let's give it the old.
Correct.
That's the ones you
Don't
try.
waste your time.
Well, in the select board decision to give the charge to this committee to proceed with what we've been doing. That was just sent to us recently.
Yeah,
And I don't have the wording in my head, and I obviously don't have it in front of me. But it said to work with, I don't know if anyone has that handy.
I do.
It does, it says something like work in conjunction with, it doesn't, that's not the correct word,
I
but
think it's like closely.
work closely with the planning board or something like that. How is that phrased? I mean, so, and that is significant. We do have to follow that.
Yeah, let me read it to you. Good morning, Pat. This came up at the select board meeting Tuesday evening. The charge, quote unquote, for the update recommendations for shoreline zone. The planning board plays a major role in reviewing the recommendations to see how they may fit into the ordinance, where specific language should use, et cetera, before bringing to the select board for review and approval. So, so that they're saying that the planning board plays a major role.
That's not what I'm talking about, though.
There's
There's a specific charge that this committee was given by the select board that
Yeah.
that says,
So-
that mentions the role of the planning. board.
Yeah, so back in the April 2nd,
April 2nd.
the Barbara Allen
Yeah,
makes a
well,
motion.
that's it, yes.
To charge the Lakes and Natural Resources Committee to conduct a review of the shoreline zoning ordinance, identifying gaps and recommend ways to strengthen the ordinance. To present to the planning board for review and to
Well, that's it, okay, well, that's it right there, to present to the planning board for
and to
review.
partner with the planning board in this review.
Okay,
That was the
partner,
part.
okay, to partner with the planning board, well, okay, that's whatever that means. So, okay, I'm just trying to get at what it is.
yeah, it's a little bit different than maybe
Yeah, well, fair enough, yeah, so we do have to be careful because I agree in part with what Tanya said. Maybe it was just because they were not quite aware of what we were doing, but at that meeting back a few weeks ago, when it was kind of presented to the planning board what we were about.
Yeah.
The reaction seemed to be quite negative, like, you've got to be kidding, no, it's like you're playing in our sandbox and you know, we're not real keen about that, and all you realize that just one of us has to just say, and the select board's gonna just off whatever you're doing. So I would just,
It was a little off-putting.
it was quite off-putting, but maybe it was just because we just kind of caught them unawares.
Probably, you know, the letter went to Sarah, you know, for.
Okay, so I think, yeah. So you just, I
And I think,
think.
Lenny, it's another issue. I talked to Sarah about this. Is that the planning board believes that whatever they bring to the select board has to be unanimous at
Yeah.
the planning board level.
Right,
Right, that's what George,
what he said.
George Seal said that, yes.
And that's been the practice, but Sarah says that's not right, and I don't know if she can change it.
It doesn't seem like
It's
that
not,
would
it's not
be,
democratic.
right,
No,
No,
Yeah.
it isn't.
and it's,
Yeah,
No, and
Right.
if it filters down to us, it really.
Yeah.
yeah, of course.
But they're like the Supreme Court, and so the planning board,
Well,
they
they,
say goes and then, you know,
But we have to go through the planning board.
yeah, we clearly do.
Yeah.
well, we have to work with the planning
the
board.
Supreme Court is also 5-4, you know, or, you know.
Yeah.
So they don't have to be unanimous to get something done, so I would think that. Let's go through this, we'll make our best efforts and then
Okay.
we'll, I think that it really resonates to present in an interim basis.
Sure.
This is where we are, this is how we got there, and we're now looking for feedback, you know, to bring them into the discussion.
but didn't somebody say that, it wasn't possible for us to present to them until April?
To the
Wasn't
plan.
that an email?
I don't
Yeah.
remember that.
I don't.
Yeah.
In the email, it was
Yeah.
back this past April, the select board.
That's when they charged
yeah,
us with
that's-
that.
No, I thought it was going forward.
I don't believe so,
Okay.
but,
I thought they said they didn't have, they
hopefully,
wouldn't want it until
hopefully the
April, and that
schedule
would
is-
be a whole year before we could do
I
anything.
think you weren't there. but-
no,
Or maybe you heard it, George, at the end of the meeting that Pat, the two of you were, Pat.
I was there, I was
You're
there.
online, George Steele was pretty clear that if we wanna get before the town in a vote in March, we have to be done sometime in November.
Right,
Yeah, right, I'm not sure, are we aiming to get before the town this March?
I think that would be
Yes.
great.
That's the idea.
We did.
well, I mean,
Uh,
I want this to play out
yeah,
correct, the way
yeah, I
it
don't,
is to be effective, and I'm not sure that that's gonna be possible. Maybe, I don't know, I mean, we still have a bunch to go here, so I mean, I'd love to do that, but I don't know if it's realistic to do that.
Well, can we make a good faith effort to do so? I mean, can we, I mean, I think it's important to set some time constraints today and try and get some consensus of what we have to do and when we have to do it by.
So is March the only time it can go to, that's to the voters, right? Is that,
Unless it's a special election.
There's November, there's March, and usually in June is the school budget. And the town doesn't like to put anything else on that. I don't know why.
It's cost involved.
oh, you're right,
Extra
but there
balance.
are, but there, right, but there are, so, but you just named 3 different times.
Right.
Yeah, so it's not just March, there are 3
Right.
different elections.
Well,
So,
we're not gonna hit November, so the first,
Right,
a year from November? I mean, that would be an option if we can't make March.
I think we should make our best attempt to get this done as soon as possible, but given that we've just learned what the planning board is like and the process of this whole thing, we may have to expand or push forward our deadline, because I would rather see it pass than fail. And I
Yeah.
finally, as thoroughly as I'm capable, read the ordinance. And, well, I'll save that discussion for later,
Yeah.
but I think we should try and then see how it goes.
So if we were to try to hit March deadline. That, in my mind, that means that we might need to kind of stop now and start interacting with the planning board and not, so do you think it would be more effective to go with a truncated a list of things, of changes that we want, or do you think it would be it would behoove us to be more complete? What I'm talking about, we haven't talked about stormwater quality. We had page 2, basically, of our note sheet. Stormwater quality, permitting, agricultural operations, town roads, camp roads, driveways, and the any changes that LD 2101 would bring. So, I mean, it seems to me we don't want to.
And we haven't finalized
Do
the other
this-
stuff.
Right.
No, we haven't.
We've talked about it
That's
all
right.
in great detail, but we have not come up with anything final. And, you know, as they say, the devil's in the details. So
Yes.
let's not,
Right.
let's not think that that's what's gonna happen.
I've got a question, this. Something jumped out at me when you read the charge from Barbara Allen was, the first sentence was to review the shoreline zone ordinance
Uh-huh.
and just read it. Has anybody else read it?
I read it.
So
Yeah.
we know
Yes.
what we're,
Right at the very beginning.
so we can assign, maybe start assigning this punch list to sections of the ordinance. Seeing what's already there and contrast to where you wanna be,
We're mostly looking at chapter 15.
but there's 25 different sections.
Yeah, there's a lot
Other
of
than that.
Yeah.
And, you know. Anyways.
Yeah, good.
The punch list is pretty broad right now, and if we can narrow it down and focus on section 15.3.
Yeah.
0 or M or whatever. Might be helpful.
It's kind of free flowing through septic, erosion control. And trees, 3
Buffers.
broad, you know, buffers of all in that stuff, so 3 kind of big.
Yeah.
Big groups.
I kind of look at it as, you know, when we started this project, I read through and took notes on the shoreline zoning ordinance, and, you know, started to sketch out the things on this punch list. I kind of see us going through this until we feel like we're comfortable with it, and then I don't see us getting to the legal side of things. I mean, I think that's working with the town lawyer, the planning board, to craft, to say, this is where we want to go. And then, you know, have somebody else craft that into the, you know, language of the ordinance. That's kind of where
But I think that's something we need to find out for sure, how, what we need to present in the structure to the planning board, that they want to see, you know, changes in section 15A3, or they want just broad policy.
Hmm.
And that's a big difference in how we approach them.
Yeah, 'cause I mean, if you hand them a bowl of spaghetti, they're just gonna say, well, they're
That's
gonna
what
pick out this strand and that strand and. You know,
I think Tom's just saying is we have to, what's your experience? We really need to bring language to them?
kind of tell them where you want it to apply. I mean. Whether it's the revegetation section, the erosion control, the septic section is very, very minuscule. There's hardly anything there. So, yeah, there's room to grow in there.
We gotta be pretty specific and tell them.
Just kind of say yes, and we'd like to address these areas and have it outlined.
Because that's the only way they can respond in terms of a vote.
Well, you're getting them halfway to the task.
To me, what's missing are the specifics. There's nothing specific enough about building a buffer. There's nothing specific, about what a buffer looks like. And also the overall is about erosion control that dates back 20 years ago. We're now seeing, so there's something called establishment of districts. That was a time when, you know, certain areas of the natural land were eroding, you know, like, what were they saying? Floodplains. Certain community areas. Now we're seeing it on everybody's residential property. So the issue is different now, and I think we need to generally refocus everybody and point to climate change and point to how the issue is now more urgent and relevant to almost all properties, and therefore needs restructuring. Because I feel like I say things that should happen, and we all agree that it should happen, and then we go to the planning board and they go, but it's already there. And I go, but I don't see that we're practicing that it's already there. I don't see people caring about the buffer. I don't see people building a buffer unless I suggest it to them. I don't think people think about when they're putting in their basement about the buffer at all. And so what I'm saying is, it requires, I think, getting people on board to realize that we need to rewrite that preface probably in light of what's going on today. And then the specifics are what's needed, which are things like delineating what a buffer is and using percentages so we're not telling people what to do when they can't do it. You know, and trying to make people understand the importance of this and not get bogged down in worrying about whether we can enforce it or not, and not worrying. One thing I did hear loud and clear was we're taking away people's rights. Well, what about the lake's rights? Nobody ever talks about the lake as though it's a being that's being destroyed. And none of us will have our rights if we destroy that
Yeah.
lake.
I'm not sure that we're gonna get legal status for the lake, but, when somebody exerts their rights, let's say that they have the right to do something, you know, that hurts the lake, then that infringes on everybody else's rights to enjoy a clean lake.
Exactly.
And what they're saying, what's been on NPR last couple of days has been basically that these lakes are all deteriorating and some.
And they were saying in Cobussy, wasn't that the same story? They were saying people in Cobussy don't rent their places in August because there's too much green.
Do they get a bloom? You know,
Or they can't rent them because who would wanna jump into green water?
and that's sort of like, you can sort of extend this out and think that that's gonna affect any of the lakes.
Yeah,
Could
well,
be.
North Pond used to be like that, right?
North Pond is like that.
Still,
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
East Pond used to be.
East Pond,
was the one
that's
that-
what I meant. I mean, I have so many customers that, you know, came from wherever and bought property and they got rid of it. They just
Did they?
left.
Yeah.
So my problem is exactly what we're doing right now. I'll be a jerk about this, I guess. Is that we sit here and we talk for a half
Yeah.
hour and then write this notes and we go nowhere. And I think we gotta get specific. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know how, we need to know how to present to the planning board.
Well, I think Hans was explaining how to present
Right.
the planning board.
Yeah,
And that's taking sections.
yeah,
Applying these concepts to a section.
So we need to, if that's the way we have to do it, then we have to plan a calendar for the next. You know, 10 sessions and deal with each section. And maybe all of us come in with some drafting.
Yeah,
But also, Chris's discussion topics and idea for changes pretty much mimic the sections.
Yeah, I mean,
He's
that's,
got them, so
They do, now we gotta
but now we gotta dig into it.
put the metal to the pedal.
Yeah,
well, what I have envisioned with us, our task is that we would go through this. You know, flesh this out, we've done half of it, add anything, subtract anything, and we've subtracted a bunch of things, as we've gone along. And then maybe we could go back and say, okay, septic systems, where does that apply, you know, and maybe we each take us an area, and then we come back and say, okay, I think septic systems applies to this part of chapters 15 or whatever it is, and then we can tie that back And then that, I mean, I think that's part of, presenting to the planning board, along with all of the people that have talked to us about, you know, just a reference, these are all the people that have come to talk to us, this is what we've read, the articles that influenced, our work, and to give them a background, we're not just sitting around pulling this out of the air, we've had a lot of people talk to us about it.
But I don't know the exact process, and I thought Sarah was gonna write something. I mean, when does DEP gets involved? When does town council get involved? Well,
Well, we've seen that, is that in the ordinance?
George Seal talked to us about it at one point,
Well,
that's all I've heard.
I think that the latter is we'd work with the planning board. And then, but after the planning board's okayed it and figured it, you know, ready to go with it, it'd be brought to the select board. And the select board would have to discuss it and see where it goes from there. Is this gonna be a town, you know, a town vote for the, you know, at the next,
Well, it's got, the town attorney has to be involved, and DEP has to be involved.
right,
But I think DEP is sort of toward the end of the process.
But I think that
The select board will send it to review, to the attorney for review,
Okay,
yeah,
then it goes to vote, if it's accepted, it goes to DEP.
right, so they,
so
State is the last.
after it's been accepted by a vote, so we could, the town could vote on something and approve something that the DEP then says this doesn't fly.
really,
That's what happened with the mooring
Yeah.
ordinance.
With that?
That is exactly what happened with the mooring ordinance.
Okay.
after town council told us it was okay.
And town attorney.
And what?
And the town attorney said it was fine, yes, and but then DEP said, well, you can't do this, that, and the other.
The DEP.
Well, this gentleman right here told us after he had finished his course that you can't do this, you can't do that, you can go so forth.
But it's not,
Inland Fisheries had a,
Well, I realized it wasn't him, it was
there's
based on.
different agencies had different issues with it.
Yeah. And check that through TP and, but to me, well, that's off on tangents, doesn't matter.
No, it gets to the heart of the matter, actually.
Well, but I don't want to go on that tangent because we're not talking about the mooring ordinance. Yeah,
I think we can continue to work through this. I mean,
yeah,
and
yeah,
then,
I agree. And then come back and, but that's how you go forward is the way that Hans was proposing it.
Yeah.
And present it to the planning board. I think we should
that's-
go with all deliberate speed, but trying to cram everything together and get it all done in time for the town vote in March, I think is a very foolish thing to do because it's just not gonna happen. All given the steps that have to take
Yeah.
place.
we have
for
to,
that.
we really need a buy-in from the planning board.
The planning board and the select board
And
and the town
the
attorney and all this other stuff.
Yeah,
And we're nowhere near done, so it's, and so. Well, we still have a lot to do, it's gonna take a
we're
while.
not gonna save our lakes overnight.
Yeah,
no,
well, and we, I don't know that we need to keep meeting every, twice a month from now. For another year and a half, but we do have probably, a year and a half before it comes to a town vote. That's my opinion.
Well, I think the thing to do is to decide when we think we're going to be there and then set a schedule and work backward, that we were all going for the same goal. We have dates, we can have chapters to review, all of that.
Well, but it's not, but we don't necessarily know that because it depends, a lot depends on what happens when we first present to the planning board in
Yeah.
terms of what their feedback is, and that'll affect a lot. That will have a big effect on how much more time it takes.
Well, maybe we set the goal as to when we're gonna present to the planning board. Maybe that should be the first goal we set.
Okay, fair
That's
enough.
an
I'm fine with
The
that.
question, can this be divided, this can be bifurcated at all? Do this in a two-step process, part this year and part next year?
Absolutely, that's our recommendation is you put your 2, 3 most likely to succeed concepts and push them forward.
Yeah, and then,
Like
because
septic and,
yeah,
we've done the work on this and move it ahead.
just like Dave Brooks said, get the low hanging fruit,
Right.
you get them done, don't try to cram down 10 or 15 things, because it'll all get,
Yeah, because any one of them could derail the whole thing.
right, so.
And then when you go to town, you wanna push to have these as separate articles.
So we may,
In case one gets shut down.
we may only do 2 or 3,
And that's what I think we should do.
yeah.
See how what's our response?
Because, you know, we do all this work, we spend the next 3 months dealing with something. And then it goes to a public hearing, it's with a planning board, and they shoot the whole thing down, all in 3 months worth of work done. So I think we gotta be more efficient in spending our time.
Have you presented the overview to the planning board yet? I think that's a good conversation to have, and say, this is where we wanna get, and here are the 1 or 2 things we're gonna work on now, this year, because we wanna be practical and we need your buy-in. So I think that approach makes a lot of sense to me as a spectator here. So,
One thing we're seeing like DLA and some other towns, Rome, are they're really looking at septic systems, because they've got a new committee that they're talking about that. This has really risen to the top. It's something people can see as an issue. And Paul, you started up that years ago, when Dave broke in, we wanted to maybe pick 2 or 3 things that we can really, that are gonna make an impact. That aren't likely to be overturned by the voters. Like Dave said, start small, get the low hanging fruit, get some victories. And if we could do that, I would think in septic systems.
if you start with 3, you're gonna be, it'll be successful if you get 2 over the finish line.
Yeah, we can get
Right.
septic and buffers,
Yeah.
those two, I mean.
The thing that kind
Touchdown.
of goes with buffers also though, I don't know if you want to include this as town roads, no, camp roads and driveways, because I know. Looking at erosion getting into the lake, that's as important as vegetative buffers. So, and that could kind of fit in. To somewhere.
Well, it's the kind of thing where, the trigger, if you're building a new driveway, it has to meet some standards.
Uh-huh.
So there's those trigger opportunities that kind of make sense and they're easy to implement.
And I agree politically, we've seen how the planning board is handling this. Because there are certain members of the planning board who are really into erosion and stormwater and sand going into the lake. And I think it would be a good idea to
Include something.
Yeah,
put something in that area.
like we did,
When we practice-
yeah, when
we
we
talked
did
about
it
that.
with Jason Stevens, I think the amount of sand that was being put on the roads was 500 tons.
Right,
And some of the members of the planning board say a lot of that goes right gets in a ditch and. No one's taking
And then you
it.
have to dig it out 3 years later.
Yeah,
so I think we should be smart politically and address that.
yes, I would think that's a button that, has been pushed. Certainly, and it's a needed one. You look down on any road with a slope, like the Lakeshore Drive and right in the village. So get those big storms, and that water's running right down, jumps across, goes through a pipe, hits the town beach and it boom.
It's 500 tons, on town roads or 500 tons for including state roads? Or
I think,
Whatever Jason Sands,
That's the town budget.
yeah.
that's the town budget, that does not include the.
not including state, just what he.
It's got a fair amount of salt in it too.
And Lenny,
Yeah, well, of course.
you brought this to our group's attention too,
Yeah.
the icing and all the other.
Oh, yeah,
Chloride.
yeah, I don't remember the numbers, the number for the town.
But out of any, I'll end my thoughts with this, out of anything we studied the most would be septic.
Well, I think we looked at septic and vegetative.
Vegetative buffer,
buffers. So
those two
the
things.
first 2, I mean, I think we spent a lot of time on those, and then I'm hearing that roads
Yeah.
and driveways. Which we haven't gotten into, I mean, we've talked about it, but we haven't gone through this yet. The other thing I would throw in would be permitting, which I think is easy. I mean, Hans had suggested the first bullet point under permitting, when DEP issues a permit by rule, the CEO must review and a permit issued by the CEO of the planning board.
Yeah.
So that,
Yeah.
I think that's pretty easy, low hanging fruit. I feel that the second one, which is gonna ruffle a lot of feathers, I'm sure, within the town. I feel really strongly about it. All permits issued within the shoreline zone require town notification of abutters. I think that your neighbors are the ones that are enforcing a
Hasn't
lot
that
of.
always been true?
Pardon me?
Hasn't that always been true that you have, if they get a variance, that the abutters have to be notified?
Could be,
Talking about something else.
maybe if it's a variance, I don't know, but.
Because I've been notified of,
But a permit,
variances.
any permit, I'm saying if your neighbor gets a building permit.
Somebody that.
Okay. New permits do not require a butter unless it's commercial development.
Yep.
And then, yes, variances, some variances do require notification of the butter.
right,
Yeah.
You're talking
so
about.
all permits, I think that's. Yeah, all permits.
I'm just thinking that.
I agree with that.
If you've got, which we've had, somebody, bringing in contractors at night and, doing stuff, I mean, Kimberly, you would agree with that, right?
I've seen them on Christmas Eve,
Yeah, I mean,
It was an emergency.
you know, right.
historically, years ago, somebody poured a slab on the 4th of July holiday, I think it was, or Labor Day, and, in a wetlands, right, on the lake. I think that, that one I feel strongly about, I mean.
Yeah.
Is that we need our neighbors to help us enforce, and then the third one under permitting, use trigger event, which, this sort of ties back to vegetative buffer. Use a trigger event to require owner to bring property into compliance on vegetative buffers, so that one I feel is,
So we've gone through all this, we made a lot of progress.
Yeah,
yeah.
when you see it here,
Yeah.
it's a lot of, it's a lot
Now,
of.
but
good
it's-
work.
are you suggesting that this all go in the first part that we were just talking about trying to do?
Yes,
Yeah,
If
man,
that's more than 2 or 3, now you're getting into 4 or 5. I'm just
that
saying,
may be,
But I found on the planning board, I might say I like these 3 and I don't like those 2, and then you've got something to
we
work
can
with.
go back and forth and.
Yeah.
and-
yeah, okay, I'd like to raise a question, maybe this is out of order in terms of what we're doing right now. But the response from the attorney at Maine Municipal Association, which I assume you all took a look at.
Yeah.
That was in response to the query that I sent at the request of the committee, asking whether or not the transfer of the property, of a property by sale or just, within a family or whatever, could be used as a trigger
Right,
to require a buffer strip. And she said, no, it really can't, because it's like being grandfathered. And I was, and so I'm not sure I'm satisfied with that response. But it's, of course, she's an attorney and I'm not, and I don't even play one on television. But it seems to me that there's a distinction that she's not drawing there, and maybe it's not a good legal distinction. Paul, you're an attorney, so maybe you can tell me if it is or no. She mentions as an example, a property where you have this grandfathered, where the properties it originally was, certain, it didn't matter how big it was and it was approved, but now it's too small under current regulations. So, but it's grandfathered. It has too narrow a shorefront, but under current regulations, but it was approved earlier, so it's grandfathered. Well, the point being, you can't make it any bigger. Unless you buy some land from your neighbor who's not, maybe he's not gonna sell it to you. So, it's in the example she cites, it's impossible there's no feasible way to change it to conform. But in the case of the buffer, there's a very easy way to make it conform. All you have to do is grow your grass higher or something, or plant some small shrubs or whatever. So it seems to me that there's a fairly simple distinction between the two. And all we're saying is, we want you should put in a buffer. It doesn't significantly decrease the value of the property to have a buffer as opposed to just having grass going straight to the lake. In fact, you could argue as I believe Chris, or I forget who was arguing earlier in the hour, that by protecting the lake, you're increasing the value of your property in the long run, along with, you know, the value of everybody else's property. So I don't know, it seems to me there's an argument to be made there. It may be that legally, there's no stand, you know, I don't have a leg to stand on, but it seemed that she was, you know, making an argument that was totally incomplete. It was only one side.
Yeah, so
It was another
it sort
side.
of applies that, you know, your property is grandfathered because it's, you know, 20 feet from the lake. And that's grandfathered. Well, you can't move your property. We're not gonna make you move your property, but we could make you
Yeah.
enhance your buffer.
Yeah, right, that seems,
Help protect
that's a very, that seems like it's very reasonable.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good argument.
Maybe we need to draft something to send back to her.
Well, I think the answer is that my legal, I haven't practiced for a while, but it goes back to basic due process.
Yeah, okay.
That's what he was saying.
And what
This
basic
person-
due process is fairness, and you balance the interests.
Yeah,
I
right.
mean, you know, the classic case is that of free speech, everybody understands how important free speech is, okay? But the Supreme Court said you can't yell fire in a crowded theater.
Right.
So it comes in this particular case, you have to make this, take the risk of the environment.
Mhm.
Versus the impairment to the property owner, you know, that he has to have now retroactively, he has to put a vegetative buffer in. So I don't think it's a clear black and white answer.
Right, okay. I
You have to
would,
set it up and, you know, argue it. But is that what we, you know,
And what does changing property have to do with that being a trigger that would be
Well, the trigger-
illegal?
we were, well,
The trigger was supposedly if property was transferred, that would be a reason to ask somebody to do it, but according to this person.
Sure.
It doesn't matter, the law the land, the rule of the land travels with the transfer of the property.
because it's so-called grandfather.
But so
Okay.
so my whole issue when I was reading this ordinance is understanding legally. How to interpret what I want to say, and I actually called the lawyer. And she had 15 minutes for me and said to me, which I thought was a very useful thing, she pointed out to me. That some of the things that I want are embedded in here. And maybe what we need to do is bring them out.
in the model in chapter 1000.
Like that piece about if you not cut down a tree, I don't see anybody planting 3 new trees, I just don't see it. And so, I don't know, do we put that in as a first sentence, do we bold it?
Well, it is all in
I mean,
the
it's
details,
there.
it is in the details, and it takes, you gotta read chapter 1000. You gotta read our statute, which is more restrictive, and you gotta decide how you wanna change. It's a lot of work, and we're just having a lot of conversation.
And then you have to enforce it. So, you know, it may be in the ordinance, but it may not be enforced. I mean, that's been a lot of issues where the perception was that Rome was stricter than Belgrade for years. And that was maybe perhaps an enforcement issue. I think, you know, the trigger, the reason we got on this trigger was that currently there's a trigger to have your septic system inspected and fixed if you transfer your property. That's now a state law. So, I mean, it kind of goes along with it. I mean,
Same
you
as a
could grant-
lawn,
what's that?
same as a lawn.
Yeah.
Really, I
Yeah,
mean,
it's
yeah,
a feature.
So I mean, it's sort of in the same vein, isn't it?
It is, it's a question of how far yeah.
What was that, did they have to pass a state law to,
they did,
They did.
yeah.
to
The
allow?
legislature did, yeah.
Yeah, so maybe there has to be a state law for vegetative buffers. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, and maybe, you know, that might, especially for like on transfers.
Yeah.
You know, you could use it if you're building a deck of 150 square feet, that could be the trigger in Belgrade.
Yeah,
But to do it a property transfer, maybe she had a point, in which case maybe you do have to pass a law. I'm not a lawyer, so,
right.
yeah.
But I think from our standpoint, I don't know, I mean, we can continue to look at that.
It's fine,
But I think the using the trigger event and getting it into the ordinance that in turn for, a building permit or a tree cutting permit, you need to bring your property into compliance in the vegetative buffer. And we would put that, we put a vegetative buffer of 30% in the ordinance. And then something in there as well to require that you become compliant on that if you're going to get a building permit. You know that?
I mean, I think we should do that. Run it up the flagpole, basically, I mean, and make it
Some
shut
version
down by
of
the
it.
selectmen, or maybe. And make it passed and a citizen brings a lawsuit and says it's illegal.
Well, that, it has to go to the town attorney first, so hopefully they'd say we got a pretty good case if somebody, sues us, but I mean, all it takes is somebody to do it, and then it seems like the town backs off in many cases, because they don't have the budget to defend themselves. No?
No comment.
Separate issue.
All right, so we've got septic, vegetative buffer, permitting. And then, I mean, so we just talked about permitting. Anything else about these 3 bullet points that we want to talk about before we kind of say we're okay with those?
What are the 3 points you said?
One is that when the state yeah, I've got an extra copy that needed.
I actually printed one out at home and left it sitting on my desk.
Yeah, so when a PBR is issued, the CEO must review it as well, which is not currently.
Right.
And that was Hans's recommendation, right?
Yes,
That first bullet point. And then we talked about the permits, requiring notification of butters, and then trigger events, used to require the owner to bring property into compliance. Anything else on permitting?
No, I don't understand it. You're saying the first thing, the CEO must review it. What does that mean?
Review it and issue a permit. Is that,
so a PBR can be issued by the state, doesn't mean it meets the town's ordinances. So
So you're reviewing it and are you
It's
we're
not
requiring a certificate or requiring some official action?
I'll
Yeah.
be checking it to see if it does require a permit. Because a lot of permit by rules are given from the state, and that's basically just saying, like a hand wave, yes, we know you're gonna do it, and it's okay. But they always tell them to check with the local municipality, and not everybody does. It's not in our ordinance that it's required. But if we do put it in the ordinance that it's required. And I believe there's a little place right after the land use in section 14 that. Tells people to check with the state for additional permitting. But if we can put in a statement that it's required there, then
It's required, but it's a
it'll
review
make
and
it part of the
review and
ordinance, so it's
approval.
enforceable.
It's not just your review, you gotta do more than that. It's your approval.
If it's required, not every permit by rule requires a municipal permit. So state wants them to get a permit for moving dirt. You know. Our ordinance, the state ordinance says, less than or greater than 10 yards requires a permit. But if they're not bringing in dirt, they're just replacing a water line or something, no permit is required.
So it's a review and approval if it's required.
Mhm.
That's how it should read. It's not just your review, it's your approval if it's required.
The other caveat to that is, it may not be a permit that I approve, it might have to go to the planning board. So,
right, yeah, that's what we have here, the
So the
CEO
land-
or planning board.
yeah, CEO or planning board, yeah.
So can. So here's, I mean, the DEP is operating independently, so they look at it and, I mean, I got a PBR to move a rock that was in the water.
Mhm.
As a hazard, so, there's an application, it's pretty extensive with photographs and everything, a site review, all that sort of stuff. How do we get the DEP to tell the CEO that this is out there?
Well, I've got relationships with there's 7 different agencies on the one PBR application. And they will usually copy me now,
Okay,
but
but that's an
If we put it in the
informal, that's an
ordinance.
informal.
it is, that, and you put it in the ordinance and it's part of somebody doing their due diligence. Would say no, that they have to bring it to the town.
Okay.
If it's not in writing anywhere, how's anyone gonna know?
Right, no, I'm just trying to think of, is there a way to, is there a mechanism to, make it happen, which would actually have to come through DEP, so DEP, but, I mean, we can't tell DEP what to do.
Not
You can
really.
require the property owner to notify the town that he's got a PBR.
Yeah, it's become quite effective already because Seven Lakes Alliance, all their PBRs, I've talked to Stuart, he gives me a copy. A lot of times when he sends it to DEP, that way I can expect
Okay.
feedback from the DEP.
So
And
this is the best we can do, is we just put it in the ordinance and.
But you can ask the property owner, make him an obligation.
Well, yeah, if it's in the ordinance, you're required to notify the CEO for any PBR that they apply for.
But it's not there now.
Right, no, I know, I get it, but I'm still relying on a property owner to read the shoreline zoning ordinance and comply with it, versus something, a double check, which would be if DEP was required to copy the town's CEO, that would be ideal, but that's not what we're after here, so, okay.
they should, and they have made their table available online. It's actually a good working chart for the state. That it populates within 15 seconds.
Of all the PBRs they approved?
Yeah,
That's good,
no, the ones in process and the ones declined, so you can type your town in there
nice,
and see what's coming up that week.
yeah,
Whether they've been accepted, rejected,
that's great.
so
That's interesting.
they are making tools
Is
available.
that available to the public or just CEOs?
Public.
Well, there's a lot of news surrounding water quality and lakes and all that. I mean, it's just, and we're seeing it several times a year, and so I think people are becoming, more. They just came out with the estimate of the value of the lakes in Maine of, was it $14 billion a year?
That project's been going on for some time.
Yeah, but this was an update to the
Yeah.
previous one.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think that's clearly, it's getting visibility.
Yes.
So we got permitting, so then the last one would be the roads and driveways. I mean, there's bullet points here. That I sort of have come up as we've talked to speakers and we want to go for this. I mean, this is,
Can we vote on each one of these or disagree?
I mean, we can talk about them. Requiring all roads and driveways in the shoreline zone to be registered with the town and in compliance with standards. Well, we don't have standards, right? I mean, we have to develop standards. So this is complicated. I mean,
That's a big one.
that's a really big thing. And then registering your road.
I think it's tough on existing infrastructure. I think start with new construction would be my suggestion. And develop standards for new construction.
Which is point 2.
Well, that sort of gets back to the stormwater quality, phosphorus controls and low impact development in a handbook and all that sort of stuff, which we don't have.
So there is a state handbook on gravel roads that you could reference, I think, in the ordinance.
Is that important to do that?
If we put something in the ordinance, yes, we would have to make a reference to a standard. And
Right, and that's an accepted standard by DEP. So, if all driveways had to meet the road maintenance manual standard, all new driveways. And I think that would be easier to sell to the public too.
Is it one manual of the DEP?
Pardon?
Yeah, it's DEP, but what's on the
Yes,
Yes.
yes, it's available on their website.
It's like a workbook kind of thing.
It's
Yeah.
about 60 pages and it's,
Yeah.
I think it's main gravel road maintenance manual
Manual,
or
yeah.
something like that.
And
And it's,
our main camp road maintenance manual, this is what it used to be called.
so, and it's, you know, the last time it was updated was 2016, I believe, and so, you know, I think. That's something somebody could, or a contractor could say, if I have to build it to this standard, it sets out what you ought to do, how you ought to maintain it. You know, the maintenance is another whole thing, which
Yeah.
is, I defer to Hans on whether there's, you know, time and, you know, how to address that, but this would be an easy place to start.
So all new roads and driveways must comply with DEP
Maintenance manual standards.
maintenance manual?
Yeah.
The, Seven Lakes Alliance does a workshop every spring. An
On
all
those
day
standards.
workshop on standards and how to, you know, how to build and maintain, camp roads, gravel roads. And it's really, and it's pretty much based on that manual.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. So that's DEP maintenance manual.
Yeah, camp road, or maybe it's called gravel road now, I don't know. The copy I have says camp road,
Camp road,
but mine is early, I think it's.
so there's a camp road, I'm just trying to get a language,
I think it's
camp
called
road
camp
maintenance manual?
Yeah, well, I have an earlier edition than 2016, so
Yeah, I can
they may have
send it
changed, they
around.
may have changed the name.
Yeah, that would be great, just so
Yeah.
we actually.
I might be able to look it up
So
right now.
that's helpful, that would be good.
Now, yeah, it's worth looking at even for this question of referencing it aside, it's quite good. Just
So-
how your camp road is holding up.
So if it does that, do we need these other bullets, or are they
Well,
included?
the next one came from Dave Roque. New roads and driveways shall be required to be built above the ground surface in soils with shallow groundwater table. Ditches may not be dug to a point lower than the groundwater table. He was really adamant in my back and forth with him and about that point, so. I don't know why, whether that's in the
I don't recall that being in there. I couldn't go.
so I mean. We can put that in right now. And then double check.
You explain that to me, I don't quite understand, I wasn't here when he spoke. What does he mean by a shallow groundwater table, how's that?
So if if it's a situation where you've got, the water tables is close to the surface, then you need to build up the road. I think that's what he's saying, basically, and then,
To be built above the ground.
and ditches
Above
have
the
to,
ground Surface in soils, so basically in areas with a shallow groundwater table, I see.
I mean,
You don't want the groundwater to wash out the road,
Right,
okay.
I guess.
no, it
And this
is,
sort
that's
of
what it is.
Gets into,
We
you
just
know, this is a
did,
little technical,
like
so I can't tell you why, but.
I can tell you why, I think, I mean, when you get a heavy rainstorm, the groundwater is gonna come up.
right,
That'll bring the groundwater up and then
Wash
that'll
out
just
the
kind of wash, and you say wash out the road. But you say-
I think he makes a good point, it's not in the manual,
Okay,
you know, so. I think we could add it in addition to the manual,
Yeah.
I think the manual's I don't wanna. It might be difficult to implement short term unless, you know, we got really specific information about how to do that. It would probably require a soil engineer like Dave to go and check for groundwater and not dig the ditch too deep, things like that, so I think it would be hard to implement, it's a good idea. In terms of the design, in general, I think, but
Getting all your roads up above grade is. It's a great place to start. That
Yeah.
way the ground and surface waters don't collect and like you say, just flow over
Yeah.
and wash out the road.
so it reminds me of the road that we repaired north of me, do you remember right on the water where the road went right along the water, and you did very extensive.
sparkling,
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you did very extensive work there, I'm
Yes.
wondering. I mean, you put in a special drain, I
Yeah.
don't remember what else you did, it was pretty complicated, I thought, or heavy duty.
but. It's hard to write all that in unless you say that all maintenance has to meet standards too, and that's chewing, biting off a lot, I think. What do you think?
You gotta do that, because so many private roads and drives out there, people are gonna just,
And how are they gonna pay for it? You know, there, I mean, there's miles of roads and, you know, we concentrate on the area within the shoreline zone, and then, so that might be one of the, you know, it's something to, I think, say, ideally, we'd be improving our standards for maintenance. Implementing that's difficult. Doing it in the shoreline zone is a good place to start, which includes the streams that are feeding into the lake. So it's on our radar, but we thought we'd start with new construction. And get the lay of the land there over the first year or two, and then, you know, look at how we might improve maintenance standards. Because a lot of that infrastructure is not going away, and a lot of it's already built. We're not gonna build a lot of new driveways. But
Right.
to the extent that we do, they ought to be done right. And that's something that is reasonable to monitor.
you know, there's a major washout that they rebuild it. To a standard.
It would be smart to do that. I mean, but often I'm working on a project in Mount Vernon, you know, with the town, and the road overtops regularly. And the initial idea was just putting in similar sized culverts, you know, half a dozen years ago. And it still overwashes. So now they're looking at putting in a bridge. So, so I think other people are similar sometimes if they don't understand that they really need to upsize the culvert. We've talked about that on Wanzer, you know, and they're biting the bullet and putting in a small bridge there.
Good.
Yeah, so, but it takes repeated errors. And I'm not sure, if you can figure out a way to implement that during the time of an upgrade, I'm all for it, if you feel you've got the willingness to do that. It's hard, it's expensive. I mean, this, on Wanzer, it's gonna run over 20 grand to put in this small bridge. Where it could have been done for 5. So I've looked at grant money into it through the 319 grants to make it, to incentivize it.
Right.
So that's another way to move people in the right direction too, is looking for, you know, funding opportunities.
Right.
But the larger task is the winter maintenance of summer roads.
Well,
Winter
yes,
maintenance kills,
plowing kills.
plow all the drainage ditches full of ice, so the water runs right down the gravel. And until there's a fix for that, you know,
It's a big problem.
So you just, so you get ice in the ditches and then that melts. Why is that a problem?
no, it doesn't melt.
And when it does, it's okay,
It
but
clogs the culverts.
Oh, I see. Okay.
and it often creates a berm on the side of the road.
Oh,
And
sure.
then the water runs down the road, and
Yeah,
if it's a
okay.
bad storm and it's soft, it'll erode the road.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Sorry to take up time, but I have a personal question. A client just called and said that the insurance company insisted that she plow her road even though she's not there through the winter?
Yeah.
Well, that might be for like emergency,
Emergency vehicles.
Fire.
Fire.
if you want fire insurance, you,
And so now
Gotta
the road
let
is,
it get there.
every year she builds a road, every year it gets destroyed by the
the plows.
plow. Yeah,
And that's what we're talking, this repeated, because all that road gets pushed off into the woods and it runs down
right.
uninhibited.
Is she the only one on that road?
She's the only one. This is a road to her house.
And when
Get
is
a new
it require
insurance.
road association?
Yeah.
Too. I've had that.
I don't know how these insurance companies think they can mandate that.
No, they're not, they're just, they're, all they're doing is saying is if you want us to, our insurance, you have to keep it plowed. Because otherwise,
I never heard that.
well,
Things have changed.
You don't ask.
So,
no, I don't think they, I think that's been
Has
Okay.
it?
enforced for a long time.
Okay, sorry for the detour.
The emergency is when
So-
your house catches on fire, if you
Yeah,
want
well,
fire
that
insurance.
burns, yeah.
Well, then you just,
so the next bullet point was also very stressed by Dave Roque, was to require all road ditches to have one or more turnouts before that ditch reaches a lake or stream. Turnouts should have a stone berm level spreader at the terminus. He's
Is that
very.
the manual?
Well, that kind of stuff's in the manual,
Yeah.
yes, but again, that's for new construction. So, you know, how you're gonna implement that on 80 miles of, you know, roads that are already in the watershed is part of our challenge.
It is, is there a legal impediment to that or just, practical?
I'm not sure people have tackled that, because again, you're looking for trigger events. I know when we had John Blaze here from Auburn, he was talking about the triggers they were looking at.
Oh, well, yeah, they're,
And they're pretty hard when the triggers, you know, tripped. But, until then, it's hard to, you know, existing maintenance activities, you've gotta, you know, really. It's very expensive to upgrade roads, and then it's
Right.
expensive to maintain them, and. You know, the question is the long term is whether we're gonna force those issues, or we're just gonna do it through incentive.
right.
Or maybe a combination of those, you know, carrots and
And
sticks.
also
Yeah.
private, outside of the ordinance, outside the municipality, the ELA, the Seven Lakes Alliance, you
Yeah.
know, trying to work it that way. So for the ordinance, do we want to,
You know,
For
and
new
again, you
construction?
can do it, you can implement some of these things over periods of decades, you know, as far as, you know, our goal is to do this. How we don't have a
but do
plan
we
today,
want
but
to start out saying require all new road ditches? Just add this as new. Does that make sense or?
I would think as new construction makes sense.
well, say you have a road that has no good ditch and they put in a ditch. If, you know, again, it's partly a matter of money. So, if we're putting money in from the state, we tell them what they need to do. But with that, again, there's your trigger. Our incentive money allows us to, you know, bring our standards into the equation. If they're just trying to keep the road open and they're just putting in a crummy ditch, which is about half as big as it ought to be, but it's better than nothing. And that's all they have money for, who's gonna pay for it? Is, you know, if they're doing their best.
Hans, if somebody is doing improvement on a road in the shoreline zone, do they need to have a permit from the town of Belgrade?
If it's within 100 feet,
And do they ever get one?
no, we don't allow
No, that's for new roads, but how about for an existing road?
them. Existing roads, no, that's maintenance,
Yeah.
putting surface gravel on.
So it's just,
But doesn't maintenance have to be best practices? And that's what,
Doesn't
No.
have to be, that's the
Doesn't
point
have
of
to
this.
be anything.
I've had people at DEP say they're just not gonna enforce it. Because it's statewide and they've got 3 people covering, you know, like
yeah,
6
so
counties. or
should
something.
we, to be pragmatic, should we strike this bullet point?
Well, I think it's worth mentioning in the context of this is on our radar, this is not easy to address.
Well, I'm not sure that we're really doing that with I'm just,
The planning board,
yeah, I'm not sure that I don't know. I kind of want to go to them with concrete stuff.
Yeah.
This is what we want to do.
Okay.
This is who we talk to. This is what they.
then I think the trigger is new construction, you know, with that within
That's
the.
easier to
For
sell.
new construction, so we could just say, okay, for new,
New road and driveway construction has to meet standards.
Which
Why not?
goes to that manual, so we
And-
don't even have to say anything.
is it already in the manual? This, having turnouts and stone
but
berm.
Charlie, if you have an existing road and you come in with a 319 grant,
Yeah,
that's not new.
right,
That
exactly.
should apply.
Pardon?
It should apply in that situation.
Well, it does because we have standards that are DEP standards. And we use the grant money to implement best management
Right.
practices.
But yeah, that's outside of the ordinance, though. That's all
If
outside of the
they
ordinance.
get a grant, then they should have to have.
I'm just saying
The
the trigger,
new
I think it should be more
standards.
expansive than new. You know,
But
substantial maintenance, a significant maintenance in our renewing, you know, we're
so substantial maintenance requires a permit from the town, which requires best practices.
Yeah, you wanna-
Um,
You wanna You wanna be expansive and require these
Well, I
best
know, I mean, that's
practices to be used. As much
trying
as,
to
if
think
there's
of
no
those.
319 grant, then they don't have to be used.
Well,
Right.
Well, no, the 319, that's outside the ordinance,
I mean,
they're gonna do the right thing.
I mean, you could write that, you know, all maintenance within the shoreline zone of roads and driveways has to be permitted. I mean, but that's an extreme, and what do you think about that?
Not gonna fly.
Right,
I
so,
mean, because the guy comes spring to his camp to open it up, and there's a big berm of sand where the snowplows pushed it.
Yeah,
So you can tell me he needs a permit to put it back out on his road, you get a shovel and wheelbarrow?
you know, or even if he wants to resurface the road, and he calls up, Rick Labby or somebody
Right.
and says, I wanna, my road has now got, ruts in it.
yeah,
I want to bring in some new bluestone and a roller, and, well, you have to get a permit for that? I don't know, I mean,
Or shoveling out the
We
culvert.
would have had to just do that.
and what if they do that, and you would say
I
no?
think if they get
But
a grant, they should.
Part of their problem half the time is that ditches aren't any good.
Oversight.
So that's what's causing some, you know, that could be one of the factors in causing the problem. But if you're not requiring them to make sure that the drainage is good, because anytime you do a road, you gotta fix the drainage first.
so,
And
yeah, so the excavator, scrapes out a
a
ditch.
lot of the time, there's,
Better than it was before when there was no ditch,
right,
but it's not gonna have
It's-
turnouts and.
it's still not good drainage, yeah.
Right,
And
but
still,
it's better than nothing.
well, and that's it. And so do you require, that's my question to you, is do you require a maintenance permit or don't you? And if you do, that's fine, but it really raises the bar as far as enforcement and
Yeah, I don't
everything else.
see I don't know, I don't see this going forward, do you?
No.
No,
Okay,
I
so,
think you can get away with new construction as a, and as
yeah,
a
we're just
starting
gonna,
point.
new
Yeah.
construction,
boom.
okay. Then two more bullet points here, eliminate use of sand or salt near stream crossing, is that, I mean. Do we need an ordinance to tell the, public works, town of Belgrade guys not to use sand or salt near stream crossings?
Is that, can
that an
you use the
ordinance?
word eliminate or do you minimize?
Is that, I'm just asking, is that appropriate to put in the ordinance?
No,
Yeah.
the town enforces an ordinance against another one of its departments.
Yeah, I mean, that's okay. Thank you, I just wanted
What about-
reality check here, okay.
What about putting sand on private roads? Isn't that what that's about? It seemed to me, it's not about the public roads.
A good
No,
point.
the dirt roads aren't supposed to have, dirt roads do better with no salt, with sand only.
With sand, yeah, with sand, not with
Correct,
salt.
that's going around is actually Hewlin Road, paved roads, town roads.
Yeah, I mean, just for example, I mean, I live on a long camp road, and there are other houses on the road, but I'm at the very end, and there are two stream crossings along our road. And, on an average of once or maybe 2 or 3 times a winter, when it's really, really icy, we call to have, the guy who does the plowing actually come and sand the road.
Right.
We've never said to him, hey, don't put any sand down, near the stream crossings. But maybe we should have, I never really even thought about that until this discussion just now.
And that sand will have a little bit of salt in it.
Oh, really? Well, maybe. Well, I
It
don't know.
was, because to keep it from freezing up solid, otherwise you can't put it
Okay,
in.
okay, fair enough.
Sand, but it's not like salt,
I understand, but but even so, even the sand itself has got some phosphorus
Yeah,
in
sure.
it. So, maybe it shouldn't be put within, 30 feet or 100 feet or whatever of the stream. I don't know.
But if you're gonna slide off your road, do you wanna slide off into the stream?
Into the culvert.
I mean,
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, people aren't gonna
Yeah, they're not gonna.
they're thinking about keeping themselves safe.
Okay,
Yeah, of
I'm
course.
gonna strike that one, so.
I agree, yeah, right,
Require all sand to be swept up after the season, yeah, okay, that's another one we'll strike, that would be, the town. Maybe they would do that.
It's impractical.
But having a conversation with your road commissioner is
Yeah. No,
worthwhile.
that's
We've already had.
Yeah.
And that will be back, when the regularly scheduled, committee gets back into them, we can talk to to them about that. Okay, so we're going to, stormwater quality, that, section we're going to strike for now, or do for another time. And the agriculture operations and outdoor livestock.
So we're down to septic, buffer, town roads and parking, correct?
Yeah, we just, camp roads or roads and driveways, I think
Because
that's,
it's gone through, yeah, we're making a lot of progress.
there'd be 4 things, and this LD 2101, somehow we're gonna look and see if there's anything, that's just there as sort of a placeholder, because that ordinance came out, or that law, state law came out, and I don't know whether we need to do anything, to enable us to take advantage of that, probably not, but anyway. All right. So, Pat, you were gonna contact Chris Mons at Seven Lakes Alliance.
Yes.
Did he ever get back to you? or-
Didn't get back, but I'm gonna have a meeting with him this week, so
Okay.
I'll get him.
But, I think my goal for that was the stormwater quality and phosphorus controls. That was sort of focused on that, trying to get Seven Lakes Alliance input on that, but which we no longer really are out on.
Yeah.
So,
Chris, there was one thing left over from last meeting that
yeah,
we were talking about the perfect world. I came up with this idea and some other people liked it, which is on a sale of property, that there'd be some review of the trees that are there.
Right.
And I'm just thinking, even for Hans's, could you require on the sale of property that somehow there'd be a picture of the property required to be filed with the town, so all the buildings that are there are required, and all the trees that are there, so you have a record of what's there, I mean, because a lot of changes happen after sale of property. What do you think of that, Hans?
I think it's a little overreach.
Well, what has to be submitted? I mean, everybody's got an iPhone and can take a picture. What gets submitted when you have to?
Nothing,
Nothing.
nothing is,
No, you hire a realtor, you don't hire a code enforcement officer.
the only thing that gets is possibly a septic
What do we do?
certification.
I think, in, earlier times, I know we've had photographed, boat, we had pontoon boats going by and photographing all the shores of the lake. Probably we could do it much quicker now with drone technology. I'm sure we could. We could do a lot of that in real estate. Every parcel we sell, we got a drone photograph looking right at it. And they can do that in about 15 minutes. If we wanted to, pursue that, we had a budget for it, you could probably, do the links.
Was it you or Dick gave me the link to Colby College has an inventory of shoreline photos?
Yeah,
From 2010,
And I've used those extensively.
they're good.
so if we could update them, Hans,
There's one area on this great pond that's. The link is bad,
yeah,
and that's the one area I really need right now.
but you really
It's
tell
your
a
neighbor.
story quickly, you might not get every tree, but you can see where something was heavily wooded, now it's barren. I saw a place in Rome like that, looking for my camp in White Sound, I go, I never saw that place before. It was a half mile away, and there it is,
Yeah, and docks, old swim platforms that are on the shoreline,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of. It documented a lot,
yeah.
so
the
that's,
shapes of houses, extensions that were in.
so that's Colby and,
Colby did it, I just have the link on my desktop, I. don't know.
2010.
Right, but-
2011, it was,
but, I mean,
it was through lakes, wasn't it? Colby Lakes or something.
The taking of the shoreline photos,
Yeah.
it was a part of the Explorer grant from, I think, 14 years ago now. And,
All the Belgrade Lakes are on there.
yep.
So it's,
And-
I remember when they
How do
did
we-
it, everybody
how do we
went out
access
and
it?
had a section or something and
They did it by boat.
by boat,
But
yeah.
they talked about repeating it and whether to do it by boat or whether to do it by drone or.
Janica did our section.
No, I didn't.
You can
but
either
I
do
know-
drone by
I
both.
think
then
you could
You could, I did one last week on the property.
have a six-pack of batteries and just go around the lake.
I'd like to look at it. How do we access that?
yeah, so where do we find that? That's what I was,
I can find that out for you. I forget.
I've got the link in my email,
Yeah.
I tried to send it out.
Okay. Great.
So I got it, I think from Dick Greenan or.
I think probably Dick on that one. But I think it's a great tool to have, if you.
It's a
see
really
what's
good
there,
tool.
You're gonna see, you know,
That's when we created, I mean, it came
Yes.
from Brian Moore talking about that his business, everybody wants to clear and make views in front of their houses. How do we approach that from
Well,
from an ordinance point of view?
you'd see if, what's there now, would probably be the benchmark. And then if you, then if Hans went by there, and they wanted to do something, a new permit, you'd see, oh,
But
there's a
how,
lot of trees gone.
can we require a property owner to do that and submit it to the town as a triggering event?
I don't think so.
No, I think just have it as an inventory, you know, so.
Yeah,
Hans could
especially
use it.
after the bad winter we just had. The landscape's changed, you know, and it's nobody's fault, so having a new inventory, a baseline
Mm,
is.
It's a great idea. We can't figure out what to do with it.
Well, it's just, I think it's outside of the ordinance. We'll do it through BLA, we'll do it through the other lakes associations.
Yeah,
And, you know, once again, your neighbors having a role in enforcing the ordinances. But related to that is, something that, the gentleman from Auburn mentioned, record buffer and property deed. That's under vegetative buffers, the last bullet point on that first page, record buffer and property deed. I don't see us doing that.
Well, that's when you require it, so that they don't cut it next year. And
Right.
so I actually think that's a pretty good one, once you have, you know. And again, once you have it,
So you have a trigger event.
a new construction,
New construction building permit. In return for your building permit, you need to improve your buffer, so it meets our 30% requirement. And we're gonna record that in your deed.
yeah.
I love it.
I mean, I think it's great to propose, and
And how do
they
you-
may not like that.
Right, how do you record it in the deed?
It's probably like a simple form that they can just bring down to the registry and for, you know, I think it's fairly cheap for the first page, less than $10. They just file it and,
It just be
or
attached.
maybe they submit it to Hans and Hans drops, you know, 20 a month.
It's similar to an easement, you get them attached to a property all the time, or they do something, an easement.
Well, that way Hans can look that record up online and see if there's a buffer that's been, you know, required yeah, as of, you know, 2020 and can, you know, is 2035 and can act on it.
Okay, so we put that back in the first bullet point, where we're requiring all properties have a 30% buffer. And then the trigger, then it gets triggered, and then, we record the buffer in the property deed. That works.
Is 30% of the
30% of the
available space gets converted to a buffer,
distance from
the
the,
lake to the house?
from the lake to any structure.
And is that for, and that's only if you do new construction?
Well, man,
If we have a triggering event.
Right,
I think the concept is that that's required for all properties.
Yeah.
But they're grandfathered, so you can't do it. But if somebody wants to have a building permit, then there is a,
and so that would only apply if no buffer is there. Or if it's an inadequate, it's
Inadequate,
10% and it needs to be increased.
And, you know, Auburn then goes into the negotiation process with the landowner.
Yeah.
And so I would think it would be the planning board here that would negotiate with the property owner to comply with the
Yeah.
buffer.
And then pick that number, whatever that number is, maybe it's 25 feet is the 30%.
Right.
And then and that gets recorded.
How do you record that? You're gonna have to have a survey?
No, well, it just says, you know, a buffer of 25 feet. That's easy to
It's
measure.
required.
Yeah,
They'll just.
no survey is too expensive.
Yeah, well, that's why it gets complicated to it.
But, you know, there's gotta be some easy legal language that
I don't know,
can be
but
developed. and-
Registry of Deeds has requirements on plans too, I don't know how that gets plays into this.
The plan is registered. As
When you
a-
file with the Registry of Deeds, you can't just file any paper.
No, they gotta record it, put it in.
But I think the town attorney could develop something that would satisfy the registry and.
Yeah.
And keep it simple, you know, whatever that 30% is, put a number on it, you know, at the time of the permit, and that number gets recorded.
Okay, another question in here, on that vegetative buffer, no cutting, it's the bullet point, it's the 1, 2, 3, 4. Fifth bullet point down, no cutting within vegetative buffer without tree removal permit. Photos of trees to be cut sent to CEO, trees to be cut must be marked, erosion control measures must be taken. X number of replacement trees must be planted, post-cutting evaluation by CEO. X number of trees. Tree has been bantered, but do we have a requirement right now?
Yes.
No,
Yes, it's in the
ours
ordinance.
says.
Well, they got their chart
Point
they
system,
use, but
the point system.
yeah. And, what I normally do is if they're gonna remove a tree, it's a hazard, it's gotta come out. I look around first to see what new growth is existing. Because those root systems are way healthier than anything you're gonna pull out of a pot and stick in the ground. So I encourage the growth of what's naturally there, if there's something there. If there's nothing there, you know, you cut down a tree that's 4 feet around
Right.
and you tell them you gotta four small trees within 10 feet of that, that's not practical.
Right,
Because the root system, the ground's taken by this massive thing.
Right.
that's-
Still,
I did the same thing for Lake Smart, but the
And,
problem is nobody can get an award.
and that's why, like Lynn Geiger said, they should just throw that point system out the window, because it's
Yeah.
intimidating, it's complicated.
It is
It's not-
complicated.
Oh, unless they replant.
Because the trees aren't tall enough.
Oh,
Yeah, it's stable up,
Yeah.
point system.
Yeah, you can't get rid of it, right, because it's
And
DP.
we are saying they can't dig up the roots, correct?
No,
No, they
if
can't.
the roots are above the ground, they can be removed, but nothing will surface.
Right.
Well,
just,
why would they bother doing that?
You can grind,
Well, you can grind it down, cut it and grind it down to the surface. Just, you know, smooth things out, that's permitted, you
Yeah.
can't dig the rest of the roots out.
we've got a hard 5 o'clock end time.
Oh,
we do,
Yeah.
and we missed something.
We've missed old business consideration of the August 13th
oh,
minutes.
Minutes.
I need to amend them.
you do?
No,
I've never.
I move that the minutes be accepted as written.
I second.
I think they should be framed.
All those in favor? Yeah, thank you, Paul, again.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Feinberg.
He really has a say.
Oh. I am gonna join the committee, so I don't know what I need to do though.
You have to get sworn in.
We'll give you an application.
Okay,
You can,
Isn't there a tattoo?
okay, yeah,
yeah,
Where do you want the
She already
tattoo? That's
has
the question.
She already has it.
Oh, okay, good.
Initiation ceremony.
You have to swear in a stack of Bibles, though. Yeah. So it's a, and it's
That
a
would be really hard for me to
pretty
do.
big stack. Right.
You have to take an oath.
You do have to take it off, it's kind of serious.
Actually,
Okay,
Okay,
all right,
I've got company, so I'm there.
So do
so,
we meet again?
well, should we start
Second,
Do it
fourth
something.
Tuesday.
well,
on a
should,
row?
okay, so should,
I'm afraid.
yeah, so should we divide this up? Can we quickly divide it
Yeah,
up?
let's do
into-
that.
Do people want to take? Who wants to do what?
Vegetative buffer,
I'll,
no,
I'll work with Jen on that.
Okay,
Septic.
We'll write it all up.
perfect.
It's gonna be tough too.
So Paul is gonna do septic.
I wish you weren't retired, I'd bring you on the committee if you were. I might
Well,
still,
that might be,
Let's
then I'd be
see.
a nonprofit guy, so. I'm a Mount Vernon resident, this is a Belgrade committee, but I'm happy to learn.
input.
We're learning from you.
It's leadership. I wanna
spy.
take this experience, bring it to Mount Vernon, so.
So you're a
Paul,
spy.
you gonna do the septic?
We're gonna work on the septic, then we need permitting and the camp roads and driveways.
You wanna do that?
Well, camp roads and driveways is one bullet, right?
Yep,
Yes,
You wanna
Okay,
do
we'll
that?
add that.
okay,
What are you doing?
let's see.
Dwayne our committee.
Which one do you want?
All we need is permitting,
Oh, what do you want to
and
do?
I can spread it.
We're actually doing.
Dividing
Well,
this up.
Well, I understand, well, no, we're not really doing either of those things. What are we actually, what are we supposed to do with this?
Good question.
Right.
We need to tie these bullet points back to the ordinance, to the specific parts of the ordinance that are relevant. And say, you know, for septics, it applies to this part of the ordinance,
So this part of the existing ordinance?
the existing ordinance.
Okay.
All right,
And they may
Well, I'll take a look at camp roads and see what I
come
can
back.
come up with.
okay,
Right on to the medical. Or you could call us.
Once you get a dialogue.
We're doing buffers. He's doing camp roads.
Just so you know.
And you're doing septic.
anybody
Is
for
there anything
permitting?
else?
Do I hear anybody for permitting?
I can look at the permit.
Okay, Kimberly's gonna look at that, and what I will do is I'm gonna start to accumulate who we've talked to. You know, and the
Yeah.
resources we've used, and then we can all look at that and add to it, you know,
Yeah.
if they think I missed something, but I can look at that, so, good.
So the next meeting, I don't think that would be it, what is that would be this September 10th.
September first, second Tuesday in September.
Second Tuesday in September.
I'm gonna be
10th, yeah.
fishing in Montana.
Oh, nice.
Ooh, very nice.
You're doing what?
Enjoy.
Probably, Paul, if you have time, you can just send us your
Can you
comments.
still, can you eat the fish?
No, I don't need, I can, I don't need it.
What kind
Okay,
of
I'll
fish?
never understand.
Trout,
Nice. They still have those now?
I hope so.
Have you,
Where's
have
that?
All right,
Montana.
you read it? Stuart?
That's on the film, yeah.
So we're still
Oh, no,
gonna.
you should read it.
That meeting.
There's some similarity, but they're not the